The planets have aligned, and once again, the prophecy has come true. That's right, folks. It's time for another episode of the Roundtable Rethink podcast with me, your host, Uncle Paddy, joined every week by twin brother in spare parts bin, Andy, the asshole.
Woo!
And sadly, we are once again not joined by the sage, Stevie Tel Avivi, who is still
Bussing around pensioners of the American variety to touristic hotspots around the UK and the Republic of Ireland.
But he is back on Tuesday, and we've got a breakfast meeting planned for Wednesday. So looking forward to that.
Looking forward to that, mate.
This week, we will be discussing prompt engineering, the second segment in our new series, the practical implementation of AI inside your business, and also an AI news speed round. It's been quite a slow news week, so this might be a short episode again. We might turn in a nice little 30, 40-minute episode.
Much to the delight of listeners everywhere.
Yeah. We will not burden them with the 1 hour 20 minute.
Absolutely, no one was asking.
The 1 hour 20 minute episode that nobody was asking for. So it's probably going to be a short one this week, but a very, very important one.
Yes,
because the importance of prompt engineering cannot be understated. But before we get to that, let's start the way that we always start the podcast, which is what's been happening this week.
I have been in Poland for the last 5 days, and I'll tell you what, there is an economic miracle happening in the heart of Europe. This is the second trip that I've done to Poland in a couple of years. So the first one I did to Wrocław, and the one that I just did there was to Krakow. And I have to tell you, there is so much to love about Poland, right? It's a orderly society, high levels of
orderly. Like that was your most important observation.
No, it is. There's a great order about it. You know, everybody knows what and who they are. There's phenomenal social cohesion. Everybody's on the same page. The economy appears to be booming. A lot of young people, big university towns as well. I mean, the whole thing just seems to be on fire just now. Talking to cab drivers, talking to restaurant workers, hearing great things about just the economy there. I mean, you consider, you know, that with all of those kind of Eastern European states come out after the Second World War. It is just galloping ahead of all its competitors in the region. So hats off to you, Poland. By the way, a very heavy day at Auschwitz as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So we did the Jewish quarter, we did the ghetto, and we did a very long and emotionally draining day at Auschwitz. So that was a real eye-opener. It's a kind of one and done. It's no one you would go back and do again, but my God, it's draining but incredibly interesting as well.
And we never really got a chance to talk about that. But one of the things you said to me when you came back was it just, again, put an exclamation point on the total demise of the UK.
Yeah. I mean, talk about fantastic public transport, tram stops everywhere across the city, buses, everything's cheap. Poland's a small economy, and it's fantastically cheaper for products, services, food and drink than it is in the UK. Apparently good access to healthcare as well. So once again, highlights the fucking outstanding failure on stilts that is Chairman Starmer and the fucking UK.
Well, for us up here, it's not even Chairman Starmer, it's the SNP.
It's the SNP.
15, 20 years of the SNP.
Yeah.
So it's made us the drug capital of Europe.
Shame on you, Britain. Your failure is completely and utterly complete and nailed on, and the polls are really showing us how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go into that because I could just get myself in real trouble. You know how I feel about that. Right, okay, on to matters much more positive. So prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is basically the language of AI and certainly the new language of business.
Yeah. So just to tee this up, what did we speak about last week? We spoke about strategy. We spoke
experimentation,
about the importance of releasing the tools to the people in the departments that are going to eventually come up with all the innovations, open experimentation and encouragement and evangelization within the departments of AI and tool usage. And now we are transitioning into the next step, which is prompt engineering.
So here's an interesting fact to get us started. So Prompt engineering 4 years ago was not even a job title. And so it's exploded from basically non-existence to, in some cases, a $375,000 a year skill set in just 4 years.
Which is unbelievable when you think about it. And you say, well, why is that? And it's because prompting has now become essentially the language to interact with AI.
Yeah. And so this was based on a study according to Stanford's AI Index back in 2024. So job postings mentioning prompt engineering have grown by just a little 3,500% year over year. And now LinkedIn lists as one of the top 5 emerging roles globally, prompt engineering.
Listen up and listen good, kiddie winkles going into university or college or university, coming out of higher education. You could do a lot worse than spend a bit of time learning how to be a prompt engineer.
So here's what every business needs to realize, right? Here's the big reality check. So in every boardroom across the world, your competitors are not just using ChatGPT, they're basically engineering it. So while most companies are asking AI to do marketing or help with customer service, the smart money's on the companies that have actually learned to speak AI's language fluently.
Yeah.
And they are seeing 34% higher AI satisfaction rates. They're seeing 76% fewer errors in their AI outputs. And they are crushing their competitors who are still using AI like a Google search.
And we touched on this last week, didn't we? So inside Joe Blow company, what is the quality of the average prompt that people are peppering these models with in your experience?
3 out of 10.
Yeah. Give me just off the top of your head, just give me a crude example, of the level and the quality of prompting that you visibly see.
Examples would be, tell me about the Johnson account.
Yeah.
Rather than...
What would be a better example of that prompt?
What can you tell me about the Johnson account, including recent wins, any support tickets, any open invoices, purchases they've made in the last 3 months? So context. You continue to add context the whole way.
So right now they're just incredibly vague. And because they're incredibly vague, they tend to get average to poor quality outputs back from the models. And there tends to be a correlation, in my opinion, of the people that says that AI isn't working for them. You go, right, show me your prompt, and you have a look at what they're actually peppering it with you, and you're like, that's why AI is not working for you.
Yeah, and so I think what people have to understand is prompting is a new language. And the great news is you don't have to be a technical person inside the company to prompt, because the truth is the main skill sets for prompting are actually things like strategic thinking, good communication, having a great understanding of business process. If you've got the 3 things, you've already got the core foundational skills of
to
prompt
build
engineering.
excellent prompts.
Yeah. But without excellent prompts, particularly when you get to agentic AI, it's almost impossible to make anything work reliably. And so if a prompt's written right, it's a mile long.
Yeah.
It's sometimes taken me 6-7 hours an entire working day to build it and refine a prompt that delivered a consistent output, particularly when I'm trying to build some agentic workflow.
And this is a wee bit of an aside, but you'll know what this is, a wee bit of inside baseball here, so listeners bear with us. But so we had fantastic prompts built for our custom GPT, but actually pairing the prompts with the right model as well, which will be less of an issue in the future as all of these models converge into a kind of standard globalized system where the underlying intelligence will just pick the right model for what you've asked it to do. But remember I showed you last week the difference between taking an already excellent prompt and pointing it at the right reasoning model to get the best quality output.
Here's the way to
think. There's a wee bit of a pairing issue there as well.
I think so. And I think one of the most important ways to think about prompt engineering is we're all using the same underlying capability, right? Why is there an explosion of AI tools, and what do the AI tools actually do? Because the truth is, every AI tool that we would recognize as being useful is actually all accessing the same 4 or 5 underlying foundational models that power everything. The difference with that tool and why it provides a differentiated capability is under the hood, it's got an amazing system prompt. It's got an amazing 10,000 line, 20,000 line, 60,000 line system prompt that takes its output from being generic and just generic slop Because if we're all using...
So what is a system prompt? What is a system prompt compared to a general prompt that you would
we're jumping
use?
ahead. You're asking me questions I'm not ready to answer yet because
okay.
we're going through this in a kind of logical fashion. So let's start with what is prompt engineering at its core. It's basically the practice of crafting precise instructions for AI systems to get consistent, high-quality results. So let me give you that business analogy that you asked for earlier, and I'll make it crystal clear this time. So imagine you've got two managers, right? And you tell the first one, hey, Steve, handle the Johnson account. And then you tell the second one, Marie, review the Johnson's account's Q3 performance, identify the top 3 concerns they've raised, and prepare a retention strategy that addresses their budget constraints while highlighting our competitive advantages in their industry.
Yeah.
Which manager do you think is going to deliver a better result?
Maria, you've got to see her.
That's the difference between a basic AI use and prompt engineering.
Yeah.
Okay? And even that is a really simple one. Now, I know what you might be thinking at this point. This sounds really technical. Is this something my IT department should be handling? Well, here's the thing. Prompt engineering is actually more about communication and strategic thinking than coding.
Yeah.
And I think many of the most important prompt engineering skills are actually management skills. So, clearly understanding the tasks, knowing what good outputs look like, and being able to provide clear instructions and actionable direction.
Yeah.
So the most successful prompt engineers aren't necessarily the most technical people inside the business. They're the ones who understand business processes, what does the customer need, and what are the organizational goals.
Got it.
And they're able to bring all these things together into a well-crafted, very long, very thoughtful prompt.
Yeah.
So if we think about how you currently use AI in your business, right? So maybe you're using...
So what would be a good example, like drafting emails or something like that?
You're using ChatGPT for drafting emails, or you've got a customer service chatbot.
Or maybe content creation or something.
Yeah, maybe you're experimenting with a bit of AI content creation. So the question is, are you getting consistent, brand appropriate, strategically aligned results?
Say that again. Are you getting consistent,
brand appropriate, strategically aligned results?
Right, okay.
And the answer is most businesses are not getting
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, what they're getting is generic outputs that require a lot of human editing, or even worse, outputs that actually don't even align with their brand voice or their business objectives.
Because they're fundamentally using it as a search engine.
Replacement for Google search. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's precisely what's happening. So what prompt engineering basically does is it represents a fundamental shift in how we actually think about AI. So instead of asking, what can AI do for us? We should be asking, how can we design AI interactions that actually consistently deliver business value?
Right.
So this isn't really about replacing human judgment, because you can build all these human-in-the-loop AI agentic workflows. It's actually about amplifying it. So when you engineer prompts effectively, you're kind of essentially creating scalable versions of your best thinking, and you're basically embedding that organizational knowledge that you've built up, your brand voice, your strategic priorities.
Into like the AI interactions that you're having.
Correct. And so the companies that figure this out first are just going to be more efficient. They're going to build sustainable competitive advantages that are way harder for competitors to replicate. Because if we're all using the same 5, 6, 7, and 8 tools, the only difference,
the only variable in out,
the differentiating factor
is your prompt.
Are your prompts better, more differentiated, more context aware,
100%.
that then produce better output than the guy using the same tool?
100. That is actually the biggest point, because that is the only variable. Because you're right, everybody is using the same underlying intelligence.
So again, I'm going to throw some numbers at you here. So let's talk a few numbers, because that's what matters in the boardroom, right? Big companies want to know what the ROI for this stuff is. So if you look at an IDC study that I looked at, global studies show that for every $1 invested in AI, companies are realizing an average of $3.50. But here's the kicker. Companies that actually have structured prompt engineering approaches, they're seeing
even higher returns.
Much more significant results. So we're talking about a 76% reduction in errors, 34% higher satisfaction with the AI outputs, and a 30% productivity increase in departments. So that's what's up for grabs.
Yeah.
If you can actually, and by the way, here's the spoiler alert. This is hard. It takes a while. You're trying to train people on brand new skill sets they don't have, almost rewiring their brain to think differently about problems, to be able to talk to AI in a different way than they've talked to any other tool they've ever used. So it takes time, but the prize that's up for grabs is 35% productivity increases if you can drive this right into the company.
And you're absolutely right, by the way. Like, I'll just give you a quick anecdote. Because I do a lot of social posting for the business, sometimes it feels easier to physically write a lazy post for that social media post and then just launch it, instead of actually taking the time to do the prompt right to get the best quality social media post. And then,
but you can be smarter about that, right? So you
can save documents and save.
You can build up a prompt database,
and that's actually, I need to get better at that,
because you're recreating the work every time.
100%.
Where if you had blocks, if you said, right, here's our brand voice, here's our business priorities, here's our communication guidelines, and you stitched all this stuff together, and they were just boilerplate on any prompt. So we've content,
definitely got that. So we've got things like, we've got our customer avatar and like a 1.5 page of who our customer is in detail, down to the activities that they enjoy doing, and that they love Prosecco on a girls' day out, and they love planning using Pinterest, for design inspiration and stuff. We've got all of that, and then we've got the customer avatar contextual information prompt, and that's got all of their fears and their hopes and their desires. And we've got a copy of that as well, and then we've got data sheets for all the bands. So we actually do have quite. We've got static information stored that we can use just to get it to ingest these documents. But it's actually creating the brief for it a lot of the times. It takes a wee bit of time. Do you know what I mean? You're a this, you're a that, you're doing this, you're trying to get this, be cognizant of this, be cognizant of that.
But you could have templates for each type of task. So if you wanted a social media content post, you have a template that you go for that, and then you have variables, which is you have your system prompt. Which is your template, and then you have your user prompt,
but
which
you're
is that
explaining what's happening on a video or a picture
that you're trying to solve in that moment. So, and it's keeping them in an organized, structured place, somewhere you can go and get them and retrieve them quickly. Because you're right. If you're building these things every time you want to go to them, you need to spend 2 hours writing a prompt. Nobody wants to do that. So you want
that's huge, guys. By the way, so just before you go any further, just pause and meditate on that. Like pulling together all your foundational documentation, again, your brand voice, your customer avatar, any, things that are specific to your company that are common across any inquiry type or any media type. Having that stuff stored and in a place that you can easily retrieve and upload documents, that would be definitely your first job.
I wouldn't even store it in documents, honestly. I would just have a prompt database. I'd have it in text, not in PDF files. I'd literally have it in...
I've literally got them in PDFs.
I know. But I'd
it doesn't seem to do any...
Because the context, the PDFs need parsed. Well, they don't get parsed. They basically get converted into embeddings. Yeah. So they basically get converted into a mathematical expression of what that PDF used to be. But if you've just got the text, you don't kind of really need to do that step. And the context windows are so big. I mean, you could have a prompt that was a mile long, and it would still be fine, right? Because Gemini 2.5 has got a
million token
context window. Oh. Okay, so let's look at some real world applications. So I'm going to give you 5 kind of concrete ways that businesses are actually using prompt engineering right now to drive revenue and cut costs. So the first example will be Amazon. So everybody will be familiar with the Amazon You May Also Like section.
Yeah.
So their suggestions, they aren't just generic AI suggestions. They're actually the result of some really carefully engineered prompts that consider things like, so here's the context that prompt needs: purchase history, browser behavior, seasonal trends. This drives billions in additional revenue for Amazon. So that prompt, and I'll bet you that prompt is a mile long. It's probably 10,000 words long.
Yeah.
That's driving billions of dollars in additional revenue
from the initial purchase. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Microsoft has an employee onboarding chatbot called First Day, and it uses engineered prompts to guide new hires through company-specific processes and answer questions in the company's voice, and then directs them off to like the right resources that they're going to need. And that massively cuts the onboarding time by weeks and improves new employee satisfaction. I always kind of present this one to business owners because it's actually low-hanging fruit. And it's this idea, have you ever thought about the company as your most important product? And have you ever thought about coding all the information of the business into a GPT? And then making that a resource for new employees, existing employees, in particular new employees, to get up to speed and become more effective more quickly. Massive unlock there and very easy to
And
execute.
if you do it right, you can create the world's best onboarder and in-house trainer, digital trainer for new staff members, 100%.
So instead of generic chatbots, responses, companies are engineering prompts that understand context, they escalate appropriately, and they maintain the brand voice. So Amazon's Alexa Plus is actually a really good example of this, right? They're not just responding to queries, they're actually following carefully crafted prompt architectures that ensure consistent, helpful interactions. But here's where it really gets interesting, right? So from a strategic perspective, while your competitors are using the same generic AI tools you are, prompt engineering lets you create proprietary AI capabilities that are uniquely yours. Your prompts are your secret sauce.
100%.
It's the equivalent of the source code for your product. It becomes an unbelievable proprietary asset for your business and makes you super
and honestly, like,
differentiated.
this is such an important point, just to hang on for a second. I think a lot of people go, well, they've just got access to a different AI tool that I'm not using. Wrong. In the overwhelming majority of cases, you have access to the exact same tools they're using. It's your ability to prompt that can get you that competitive advantage.
Yeah. Think about it this way, right? So everybody has access to the same AI models, but not everyone knows how to make those models think like their business, speak in their brand voice, prioritize their strategic objectives. So when you engineer prompts effectively, you're effectively just creating like custom AI employees that understand your business as well as the best humans do.
Yeah.
And that creates what I call the AI differentiation. So your customer service AI doesn't just solve problems, it solves them in a way that reinforces your brand values. There's another thing you could bring into your prompt, your brand values.
Yeah.
Your content AI just doesn't create copy, it actually creates copy that aligns with your strategic messaging. And your analysis AI doesn't just crunch numbers, it interprets them through the lens of your business priorities and your financial objectives.
Yeah.
And so these are the type of things that can be achieved when you really, really take prompt engineering seriously. Now, let's talk about the flip side. What happens if you don't invest in prompt engineering? Okay.
Well, you're essentially leaving money on the table and putting yourself in a poorer competitive position.
In what ways are you doing that?
Well, I mean, you're paying for AI tools, but you're not getting the full value at them, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like buying a Ferrari and only driving it in first gear or something like that. You know what I mean?
Actually, exploring the full potential of the purchase, right?
Yeah.
And so teams are spending time editing and fixing AI outputs instead of leveraging them for strategic work. So instead of actually having AI do all the work, what's the point if in 1 and 2 AI outputs you actually have to go and edit all the content anyhow, right? You kind of lose the value in it. Another example would be when employees use generic AI tools without proper prompting, they actually might inadvertently share sensitive information.
Yeah.
Or generate off-brand content, or make decisions based on AI outputs that actually not really designed for your specific context that you're trying to dial in. So the last and most importantly, you are falling behind competitors who are basically building AI capabilities that compound over time.
And you know what all I'm hearing here is there's just no way to get away from the work, right?
Yeah.
I still think that the average user still thinks that AI is a genie that they can summon for a bottle and with a very vague prompt get it to run off and do a trillion different things. But what I'm hearing loud and clear here is there's no getting away from the work. Prompt engineering is just the work that's required to be done again.
Yeah.
So you're like, even I've got a bit lazy with it, right? So I understand it and I'm using it at a much higher level than the average bear. But I'm definitely not storing system prompts and company value prompt. You know, there's just no getting away from the work.
There is no such thing as a perfect prompt.
Yeah.
The truth is, it is a iterative, ongoing process that never, ever ends.
And by the way, all we're talking about here so far is the prompt to get the initial output. There's then prompting required after the initial output to massage it and get it into better shape and get it to the refined final output that you can essentially deploy.
Yeah. No, and it never ends, but the same principles still apply.
Yeah.
And so it's a brand new language that people need to learn how to speak, and you cannot just offload it to the IT team. Every single part of the company needs to learn how to speak this new language, or you're going to have to go and hire them at $375,000 a time.
It's a great opportunity for staff members as well. If you can
And then when they leave, you're screwed, right?
Aye.
Because you only had one or two people inside the business that knew how to write prompts. This is not an unknowable art form. Yeah. It's actually one of the most discoverable things. It's just a kind of different way of thinking and a different way of working. And like any new skill and any new habit, it takes time to develop.
And an incredible value unlock
establish.
inside companies. Take a 30, 40 grand member of staff, turn them into a phenomenal prompt engineer, and just watch the value for that team member explode in your business.
Multiplied by 80% of the team members in the business,
in
right?
the company.
What does the business look like look like after that happens?
100%.
Okay, so the gap between AI users and AI engineers is widening every quarter. So the question isn't whether you can afford to invest in prompt engineering. It's whether you can afford not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're convinced that prompt engineering matters for your business. The question now is, how do you actually implement this?
Implement the framework.
So I'm going to go through this kind of 4-phase framework that you can start implementing literally next week. Okay, so phase 1 is the audit and assessment. So you don't just jump into prompt engineering. You've kind of got to figure out what's happening first. Phase 2 is governance and standards. Phase 3 is capability building, and phase 4 scaling and optimization. So let's break these ones down individually.
So phase 1 touches a wee bit on some of the stuff we spoke about last week, eh?
Yeah. Well, it's audit and assessment. So the first thing you need to do is you need to understand, how is AI currently being used inside the company? And I guarantee it's being used more than you think. Who are the closet AI users that have yet to step forward?
Who are actually who are pocket using it for their phone?
They're using it, but they don't want to tell their boss because they're kind of looking like rock stars and hitting all their goals and maybe doing it in a way that used to take less effort than it used to. But
Pandy's reports are so much better than they used to be.
Yeah, my man. Melissa's really cranking out the Facebook posts.
Andy's Facebook posts are just
today.
Brilliant.
So your marketing team's probably using ChatGPT for content ideas. Your sales team might be using AI for email drafts. Your customer service team could be experimenting with chatbots as a bit of a side hustle. So you start by conducting what I like to call the AI shadow audit. So survey your team about their current AI usage. What tools are they using? What are they asking AI to do? What results are they getting? How much time are they actually spending editing AI outputs?
Yeah.
And that audit's going to basically reveal two things, right? So the first thing is, where are you already getting value from AI? Because that might be unclear to you. And secondly, where are you leaving value on the table? So most executives are kind of surprised to discover that their teams are already doing basic prompt engineering. They just don't know that's what it's called.
Prompt engineering.
So that's the first thing. The second thing, the boring but important stuff, is kind of governance and standards. So once you've understood your current state, you need to establish governance, right?
Because we touched on this last week, and we were actually quite down on companies trying to control 100%. AI use within the business. But the truth is, if you're a big enough company, you can't just have everybody running off willy-nilly doing what they want with any tool that they want, right?
Exactly. So executives, listen to me very carefully here. This is not about restricting AI usage at all. It's about optimizing it and managing risk. It's not about shutting down AI usage. And so you've got to be very positive and don't let governance and standards sound like suppression to AI energy and enthusiasm, right? Which is very difficult to actually build inside the company.
But as you said earlier, you can't have a staff member accidentally revealing sensitive information about the company on an output that was created because they didn't actually realize that that was sensitive information that they couldn't send to somebody, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the governance comes in.
So the way that you solve that is you build prompt profiles. So for different business functions, let's say...
What do you mean? Sorry, prompt profiles?
Aye, so like take marketing as an example, right? Your marketing prompt should include your brand voice guidelines. Your legal prompts should include or should emphasize accuracy and compliance. Maybe your customer service prompt should prioritize empathy and resolution. So that would be an example of standards and governance.
Right, okay.
What information can be shared with AI tools and what can't. So you want to create templates for common business tasks, emails, responses, content creation, data analysis that include your business's context and quality standards.
Yeah.
And so it's back to your point from earlier, right? We can't have people just writing prompts all day long. That will be the case in the first instance.
Yeah.
But then we've got to catalog authorized, well understood, well trodden, performing prompts in a prompt database that you can grab out of there and then use in your use
We
case.
actually done a lot of work with this with our customer support GPT internally, because when we built it, we thought, oh, this is great. This will make Kerry's life dead easy. But then the more and more we get into it, we're like, wait a minute, if this tells a customer something wrong or something that's in opposition to what our actual policy is on any certain issue, you can really get yourself into a pickle and cause yourself a lot of problems as a business.
Exactly. Okay, so think about this as creating the operating system for AI inside your organization. So you already have standards about how employees communicate with customers, and you need standards about how they communicate with AI.
Yeah.
And so establishing their rules up front will stand you in good stead for the next phase, phase 3, which is capability building. So this is the fun bit. Right now comes the capability building phase. And this is what most executives, or this is where most executives make mistakes, right? They think they need to hire expensive prompt engineers. They don't. You need to develop prompt engineering skills inside your existing team.
Why? Because the guys that are currently in there know the departments best in all the use cases.
They've got all the context of the business. They understand the business processes. They understand their part of the company better than anybody
They know where all
else.
the dead bodies are buried in other departments. So.
And they're probably a leader in that department. And if they're a leader, they're already probably a strategic thinker. They already have a great understanding of the business processes. So they're tailor-made for it. You just have to give them a shot. And so start with the power users. I think that's what we're saying.
Power users,
The people who are already experimenting with AI, give them training on prompt engineering fundamentals, right? Teach them to be specific, provide context, use examples, and most importantly, iterate based on the results. Prompt engineering's a loop. It's a flywheel. You write a prompt, you get a result, you evaluate. You write a better prompt, you get a result, you evaluate. And you do that as much as time permits. And you'll never be done prompting.
And I'm kind of thinking in real time here, but as we're going through this exercise here, what it's making me realize is if the company spend the time, the senior leadership of the company spend the time writing all the generalized prompts, it actually just leaves the people in the departments. It makes it less work for them because they can use the generalized prompts to support the prompt that they're about to build, but they can fundamentally spend their time on the department-specific or process-specific prompts for what they're trying to get done.
Exactly.
But leverage the database of generalized information on the company.
So that's the difference between a system prompt. So think about your company library of prompt as system prompts, and then your user prompt is augmenting the system prompt. The system prompt should look your boilerplate, and then your user prompt goes in the middle of it somewhere. It's the context for that specific use case.
I've just realised that I've actually been doing that accidentally, no understanding of that dynamic between it.
Okay, so you want to create prompt libraries, and when somebody develops a prompt that works well for a specific business, capture it, share the fucking thing, and build a knowledge base of what's inside your organization. That's what does not happen in companies. Everybody's sitting on this little gold mine of prompts they've got, but they don't tell anybody about it and they don't share it. They don't come together as a group to celebrate awesome prompts that generate great output and solve real business problems, because we don't seem to be at that stage yet in the cycle, right? That has to be forced.
And again, not to take a couple of steps back, but that's probably, see, like Scrum calls on a Monday and stuff that we do. That will probably be a future part of Monday Scrum calls, which is, guys, let's not just talk about our wins and sales this week. Let's talk about an amazing prompt that somebody built that's actually getting great output for the company. You want to build cross-functional teams. You want to take different people from across the business, bring them together, call them a goofy name, the Fellowship of AI or whatever, right? The Cloud Collective or the AI Tiger team, the AIT, the AI SEAL Team 6, whatever they are. They should be coming together and meeting every week. They should be sharing best practice, because as I've said ad nauseum on this podcast, you cannot learn these skills
just fucking talking about it. Or just in the classroom environment. If you write 3 prompts, you will immediately get 10 new ideas for 10 additional prompts.
100%. Particularly if you've got a brain in your head, particularly when you see the output that those prompts generate, your mind will go, right, okay, so if I do this and I change that and I augment this.
It's almost understanding what's possible. Do you know what I mean? And when you've seen it done, or you see an awesome prompt and you're going, my God, that was so clever. And then instantly you go, oh, wait a minute, I could take a bit of that and apply it to this thing I've got over here. So sharing prompts with each other, building that collective hive brain within that cross-functional team, sharing the love, sharing what's working, getting inspiration for other people's awesome prompts and figuring out how to implement a version of that in your part of the business.
Start a Slack channel.
It's a flywheel.
Start a Teams channel or a Slack channel.
You've got to get that flywheel going.
AI prompts,
Okay, final phase 4, scaling and optimization. So this final phase is where the real business value starts to emerge. So this is where you move from, individual productivity gains to organizational competitive advantage. So start measuring prompt performance, track metrics like accuracy, how much time was saved, error rates, user satisfaction.
Huge. Never even thought of that.
A/B test different prompts. There's I bumped into a tool this week called Prometheus, which allows you to A/B test 10 versions of the same prompt across 10 different models.
Building KPIs run about prompting,
Exactly.
As you would in every other area of your business, important area of your business.
And figuring out what's better for your customer service. Is it formal language or conversational tone? What generates better marketing content? Is it detailed briefs or creative freedom? Build feedback loops. That's what we're talking about, right? I'm saying flywheels, but really what we mean is feedback loops, where AI outputs require significant editing. Analyze why the fuck that is. Was the prompt too vague? Did it lack business context? And use the insights to continuously improve your prompt library, which will turn. Imagine you had a prompt library with 250 killer prompts that were predictable, that produced excellent differentiated output. What an incredible proprietary asset that is for any business.
And every department's got its own wee skunk works, prompts at work that every team member in the department can access and just draw down on. And then I was talking about how slow it can be sometimes creating a prompt, for the first time. But I suppose when you've got it there and it's reusable and it's recyclable, just make it available to all the team members and let them run with it. And then particularly when you've already validated that you're getting good outputs for it as well.
And where this kind of finally ends up is an AI workflow integration. So instead of using AI for individual tasks, and that's kind of where you have to start, right? Everybody wants to get to this part straight away. They want to literally go, right, how do you start automating everything across the business? And the answer is, well, you don't even have even if we could, you wouldn't even understand what we automated and how we automated it. Therefore, you could never stand over it if it failed or if it never produced high quality output. You wouldn't know what to do. Everybody wants to start there. It's where you end up. You have to go through these other stages first and build that muscle inside the business. So finally, you want to start thinking about AI workflows, engineering prompts that work together in business processes. So for example, a sales prompt that generates initial outreach followed by a follow-up prompt that analyzes the responses, followed by a proposal prompt that incorporates the client feedback.
And we're already using a tool that if you put the right prompt into it, does all of that, called N8N.
Yes. But you don't go straight to N8N. You build up to N8N. N8N is a low-code, no-code tool. So, it's a low-code tool rather than a no-code tool.
That allows you to automate any process. So you can essentially...
You still can automate processes without any programming experience at all. There is a learning curve to the tool.
Yeah.
But if you, in that cross-functional team, if you've got somebody on that team for the engineering department, the software development team, then they can, access the code node and write some JavaScript to solve a data transformation problem or pull data from a node that was 2 nodes back. So... Anyway, N8N and AI automations is what you get when you fall out of the helter-skelter at the very bottom of the ride.
Right. But prompt engineering plus automating processes inside companies is what spits out the big savings or the big profitability boosts at the end of the whole process. And that's what every company's chasing this for,
Yeah. But you can't go straight there. You've got to go through all these other steps first.
In a linear fashion.
And by the way, you can outsource the building of any end workflows, but guys are charging 10, 15, 20,000 quid for these. Would you not just rather develop that skill set internally? Understanding that it takes a while to develop, but it's a foundational skill inside the company.
And once you've got it, you can just go to town, go from department to department. You know, once you've been through that linear flow and you end up at automation, and that's what spits out the big financial savings and really justifies the investment in
this
AI.
This is a massive accelerated learning curve that businesses are going on that has no end point. You will never stop learning this stuff. The problem is most businesses have barely got off the blocks.
Yeah.
But the depth and the breadth of this subject matter, I mean, we could spend the rest of the day. We haven't even get into prompt engineering frameworks or any of that stuff, right? We've literally talked high level. I tried to optimize the content for an audio format. I mean, if you were doing a prompt engineering framework, you'd want to be reviewing and looking
on
at
a
different
board.
Prompts.
Yeah.
That's very hard to do in a podcast. So let's talk about 3 big mistakes before we wrap up, okay? And I see executives make these all the time. So mistake number 1, treating this as purely a technical problem, okay? This is not a problem for the engineering team. The best prompts come from people who understand the business context, not people who understand the technology.
Yeah,
okay, that's the first mistake.
Couldn't agree more.
Mistake number 2, implementing AI tools without governance and standards. It's basically like giving everybody in the company access to your brand guidelines, but not actually requiring them to follow them. So without proper governance, you'll just get inconsistent results, maybe even security risks. And missed opportunities for the organization to actually learn. And then the third big mistake is expecting perfection immediately. Yeah. Prompt engineering is an iterative process. And a well-crafted prompt might take... I mean, if I told you could spend up 40 hours on a prompt, would you believe me? The answer is you absolutely could.
Yeah.
So it's an iterative process and you want to get better every day and you want to go back and refine your prompts all the time.
We were actually talking the other day about how to take the GPT for sales that we use internally, which is used mercilessly by staff, and turn it into a front-end service on the front end of your website. And you had a look at all the documentation in the GPT and you said you could create a system prompt with all of that documentation parsed through as a JSON request that would basically simulate on the front end of the website everything, all the use cases that the staff members are using it for internally as an internal tool at the moment. So when you think about that, you're talking about context window again. So we've got 20 to 30 documents in there. We in total in aggregate maybe 400 to 500 pages of documentation within those 20 PDFs. But that might add up to 400,000 or 500,000 context window. Do you know what I mean? Token context window. So all of that stuff could be passed into JSON and actually made as a system prompt for a front end to actually deal with.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I think we've done prompt engineering. We are 43 minutes in.
What?
How did we do 43 minutes?
Fuck did we get to 40 minutes on that?
Guys, for anybody who made it this far, I know that was quite heavy, but sometimes the subject matter is just heavy. And it is necessarily deep and slightly technical, and it's not just fun, goofy stories about Elon. And this is one of the weeks. But honestly, this is really important stuff.
Because we will cover more flowery and entertaining stuff in terms of the implementation of AI in your business. But I'm not actually sure we'll cover a topic that's as foundationally as important as this one this week in terms of with the end result that you end up getting.
This is it. I mean, if you don't ever listen to another episode of the Roundtable Rethink podcast, this is the one you should listen to, take notes, and go away and put into action. Nothing else will be more profound. All right, let's wrap up. We quick fire news round.
There was a couple of wee kind of speed stories that I wanted to touch on. One of them was run about a kind of safety issue. So again, what do we know about AI? The race is so competitive amongst countries, amongst companies, amongst continents, that nobody can take their foot off the gas pedal for a second or they risk going to number 572 in the race from position 1. And so what is that forcing? It's forcing a breakneck race towards superintelligence and AGI. But what are the potential consequences that we're tripping up over as we get there? So there's a company called Palisade Research that actually do a lot of the safety testing for a lot of the big model makers.
Okay.
And once again, one of the big reveals that came out of their latest round of research last week was that this was specifically on the O3 Pro model that ChatGPT have just released, which is their most advanced model. And what they found is it continued to resist shutdown during testing. So it was given 3 math problems to solve and then explicitly told to shut down in the system prompt. And 7 out of 100 times it tried to sabotage the shutdown protocol. So it was rewriting the script to display shutdown skipped, or redefining the kill command to print intercepted. And it was doing that off its own back. And when they took away the explicit allow shutdown...
I want to live.
Honestly, when they took away the explicit allow shutdown command, the resistance level jumped to 79 out of 100 runs it tried to sabotage the shutdown. When they took away the explicit instruction to shut down, right?
Hang on, how did it jump when they took... Why would it have jumped when they took away the explicit instruction to shut down? It no longer has anything to worry about because you're not asking it to shut down. So why would it go haywire at that point?
No, you're getting it the other way around about. So when it was explicitly told to shut down, it sabotaged the command 7 out of 100 runs. But when they took that prompt away and then just wrote at the end of the 3 math test, shut down now, at 79 out of 100 runs, it ignored or sabotaged the command to shut down.
Right, okay.
So in one run it was built explicitly into the system prompt, and in the second run it was just an add-on shutdown at the end of the task. And so interestingly, it's not the only model to do this. There's examples of both Grok and Gemini having similar issues, and what the researchers at Palisade Research are hypothesizing is that it's actually a bug in the training process of how we train these models, particularly reinforcement learning is the biggest contributor to this because it incentivizes problem solving and goal achievement.
Right, okay.
To almost any detriment.
So it saw that command as a problem to be solved.
It's a problem to be resolved as opposed to exactly. And so it got me concerned a wee bit about AI safety again, because we are galloping towards AGI, and if models are doing that in their current form, well, just fast forward 12, 24, 36 months when you're dealing with something that's like a 500 IQ, super intelligence.
Yeah.
What other things is it going to resist doing? Because there might just be fundamental issues with the process of training and reinforcement learning that just, it's so desperate to solve a problem that there may be other things that it's not comfortable taking instruction for you on.
And listen, it's not like
I don't think that's a totally out, like, I don't think it's an out there, like, oh, that's nothing to worry about. I think
they'll be aware of that, and they're red teaming all this stuff. They have safety teams within all the big model makers, and they're constantly like running these experiments and working out how to tweak. But yeah, I mean, is it conceivable at some point in the future something
this is a non-zero
something unexpected
issue,
or something unpleasant will happen? Yeah. Sure it is.
And that's why you've got to have the electrical kill switch to these things at all fucking times.
But what's absolutely clear, and you know, some people might take what we've said today and they'll go away and they'll start writing prompts, and they'll write a prompt and they'll go, oh, look, I never got what I was expecting. And of course, if we reviewed their prompt, we'd probably see immediately why that is. Guys, here's the other thing about the silent accrual of value in the model getting better constantly. Your prompts will work better unmodified over time, just as the underlying capabilities of the model improve. So Grok 4, we have Grok 3 right now. Grok 4 is apparently coming round about the July 4th holiday.
Yeah.
It's, you know, if you go on Elon's Twitter account or the guy who runs XAI's Twitter account, they're promising enormous things about what that's going to be able to do.
And just as a case in point, just to do a run around on what I mentioned, touched on very briefly earlier, we have built a GPT internally that we were not happy lately with the performance of it.
Yeah.
And all we did was take the exact same documentation and point it at a different model. And I showed you on screen firsthand a gigantic, unbelievable improvement in information accuracy and quality output coming back.
Gone from 4.0 to 0.4 mini high.
So
going from, because I think there was sufficient
and then 0.3
information.
was even better, but is very taxing on tokens.
Yes, and that's we've always got to trade off the running.
Yeah.
You need to run the most expensive model you need to run in order to get consistent output, but you certainly don't want to overcook it, because what we discovered by experimenting is we were getting almost as good output with 04 Mini High,
but getting
but had 100 times more
usage limits that model than you did on 03.
03.
And so it turns out that it was upgrading to the reasoning models to run these GPTs that was actually getting us a performance. So just again to double click on your point.
And is that held up?
It's held up great.
Right.
Same data set, better model equals fantastically better outcomes.
And we'll see that. So Grok 4 will be out in July sometime, and then you're going to see ChatGPT 5 before Christmas. So you're going to see one big rev of all the main model makers, and again, there'll be 30-40% improvements from where we are today. Don't forget, this stuff was unusable a year ago in a production environment. Totally unusable. Yeah. Great prototypes, great proof of concepts, unusable in a production environment. Yeah. And now today it's being used everywhere. And
you looked at the announcements, the kind of teaser announcements about Grok 4, which is they're going to jump to the top of the leaderboard in terms of just overall intelligence, horsepower.
And have a dedicated code gen model as well.
Dedicated code gen model, and a slight difference in how it's trained, because Elon is a genius, this will be the first model that's using reasoning from first, or is it the first model that's using reasoning from first principles?
I don't think they've done the new training run, which is to basically clean up all the publicly available information. So it's still on standard publicly available information, but it is reasoning up from first principles, which is a different take on how reasoning models work.
And apparently it's already in the lab, scorching all the benchmarks, and it will be the most advanced intelligence model when it launches.
So the technology,
and on it goes.
So here's the big takeaway. The technology is imperfect, and from time to time it does hallucinate, and that is no reason not to use it. And it is no reason to go and start developing these skills. What are you going to do? Wait until it's perfect before you go on what will be a 12 to 18 month learning curve to become an AI first, AI led business. And by that time, you've been completely outcompeted by your competitors, because they just walked around about the inconsistency and the odd hallucination, but they still managed to extract the value they needed to get from it, but developed the skill set and the tools inside the business to take advantage of.
But you know what's really scary? And I think we'll finish on this. So there are really a handful of frontier model makers in the world that are providing all the innovation.
Maybe less than 200 people on the entire planet.
That are really at the cutting edge of
AI researchers.
Yeah. And I saw a story this week that absolutely blew my mind. So obviously Meta with a Llama model has been really quite behind the curve for a long time now. No real signs that they're closing the gap on the people in front of them.
Yeah.
And so they've developed a brand new strategy by launching fire hoses of money at OpenAI researchers. And some of the numbers that are coming out of this poaching operation would literally bend your mind. So the report I saw the other day is they're offering $100 million signing on bonuses to individuals with $20 to $25 million per annum salaries.
I think it's close. I don't think it was. I think the guys themselves came out and said it wasn't $100 million up front, but it was pretty clear it was a lot of million. I think the number that's being reported that's fairly accurate was $100 million 4-year compensation plan. So just comp was $100 million over 4 years.
So you're getting $25 million bucks a year.
And there was massive upfront, and it might not have been $100 million, but it might have been 25 or 50. But it wasn't $100 million. But the broader way, as an employee, that's unbelievable.
It's never been heard of before.
Some companies don't get acquired for that kind of money, never mind individual employees.
And what it really screams to me is, although everybody's starting to use AI, and there's probably 1 billion plus people that are kind of using it to one extent or another, there's actually a relatively few number of researchers in the world that really know how to advance it from where it is at the moment. And so the race to acquire the talent and the teams now is getting it's like the Saudi football league, paying fucking Ronaldo $1 billion to sign up for Al Nassr and a $400 million a year contract.
And so let's use that to steel man what we've been talking about for the last hour. You have to develop this internally because you cannot afford to buy it.
Yeah.
If you were to go and hire a top 1% professional prompt engineer who does that for a living, they're $400,000, heading to $500,000-$600,000.
And by the way, guys, if you're just a really
And then you're competing with Salesforce and Microsoft and Google and all the biggest, deepest pocketed companies in the world.
Let's finish
for
with an
that
inspirational message to staff members inside of teams.
Hell yeah.
If you ever wanted to put yourself in the strongest position to extort your boss for a fucking crazy pay rise, a 20, 30, 40, 50% pay rise, do the 100 hours to separate yourself for the rest of the team as a prompt engineer, and you will create massive leverage for yourself inside that company to negotiate a crazy pay rise for yourself.
There you go. A fine note to finish on.
Woo! That was a heavy one, guys, but a very important one. So I hope you take the time to just, put this on 0.5 speed and fucking slowly work your way back through it again.
Some episodes are just like that. Some of them are heavy. Some of them get deep, kind of heavy duty subject matter. This was one of them. So anyhow, episode 21 in the can.
There's gold in them hills.
Like, subscribe, share on the platform, download on the podcasting platform of your choice. Stevie Tel Aviv is not here to shamelessly beg for likes.
So we must do it in his absence. And
so
remember,
get us on the podcasting platform of your choice. Do your mates a favor and share this episode and turn them into prompt engineering ninjas of the future. Or our least favorite option, get us on our website at the Roundtable Rethink.com. Alrighty, that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Cheers.